First, he tabulated all the bank book deposits transactions, including deposits from the government in the form of GST, HST refunds, GST, HST rebates, T1 refunds, Ontario Trillium benefits, Ontario sales tax credits, and so forth, which also come from the tax years 2009. He claimed them all as known sales and unknown sales, which Bruce also agreed. This, of course, does not make sense. This is not an audit. This is just about taking the money from you by pretending doing an audit. Here in Part A summary is the total bank deposits, or David calls it sales, equals $229,525.54 belongs to the husband, but it is actually belongs to two people. Then there is the T1 refunds of tax years 2009 and 2010, and the amounts, they do not exist. David was creating more lies in this audit report because his sole aim is the money in the bank book. The audit period is from July 1st, 2010 to March 31st, 2012. How in the world David used tax years 2009 and tax years 2010 prior to the audit period? But he applied the tax year 2009 to the audit period December 31st, 2010, and the tax year 2010 to the audit period June 30, 2011. Then the amounts, they do not match with our record. They do not exist. David was creating fictitious numbers. Here are more fictitious numbers he created to deceive. The husband's income from investments per T-slips, which Bruce Pettipas cannot tell what T-slips they are, which is $100 per quarter. The BN refunds, which I consider as business number refunds that never exist. Does the federal government refund businesses for having a business number? I don't think so. Then there is the calculation of the wife's income, which David used the same bank book deposits, the same bank book deposit transactions, and claimed them as the wife's sales. Then T1 refunds, which she never receives. The GST, HST refunds of tax year 2009 and 2010, which she never receives or they do not exist. The dividends, the interest, the capital gains, income from investments, they do not exist. Worse still, in this calculation, David claimed that between the husband and the wives, we receive $7,134.77 from the federal government. What did we do that we received this amount of refunds from the federal government? There has never been any record in our bank book that we received these refunds. Someone must have used our identity and take this money from the public treasurer. From the same bank book, David came up with the wife's sales of $219,390.77. It is similar to saying that one bank book, two people, double the sales. It is impossible, isn't it? This is an audit of the husband's GST HST. How in the world the wife is also a GST HST registrant? And David did a detailed calculation of her GST HST per quarter. In reality, the wife is not a GST-HST registrant. The purpose is to deceive. Therefore, David made all the fictitious numbers and calculations for the wife to deceive. This is David's calculations of the wife's income using the same bank book. He multiplied his calculation of the husband's and wife's income. While this is supposed to be an audit of GST-HST registrant of one individual, in this audit report, David has actually finalized his audit work as seen in his Schedule 1, but pretended asking for the list, knowing that it is impossible for the victims to make sales per sales invoices equal bank book deposits. It is interesting that David used the Excise Tax Act subsections 238(4) and 225(1) as the basis for each quarter. He is hiding behind this act to scare the victim that he is committing a crime. When I asked Bruce Pettipas, where did David get the fictitious numbers, he said from the CRA record. But it is impossible. Where is the amount of $7,134.77 given by the federal government, and why there's no record in our bank book? Since the government goes electronic to save money, we receive payment directly deposited into our bank account. But there was no such record. When asked about the dividend, interest, income, investment, capital gain, Bruce said that they are only assumptions. This does not make sense, or simply just a way to confuse and deceive the victims. Auditing is about finding the truth. Why using assumption? Assumption is a dangerous knowledge, and those who use it are unwise. Yes, auditors do not work with assumption, especially in auditing. He gave a hint to pay for the penalty, but who wants to pay for a penalty, knowing very well that this is a fraud? So bluntly I said, this is a fraud. Laughingly, Bruce suggested that I can appeal, but first find an accountant who has been familiar with their appeal process. When a leader is corrupt, his subordinates are evils. In this case, it is almost like the leader endorses or creates the scheme of fraud. He endorses evil deeds. The following is the letter from Bruce Pettipas, Chartered Accountant, the audit team leader. In response to my argument through the telephone and through my letter, Bruce Pettipas, Chartered Accountant, the audit team leader, sent his letter. First, about the letter. It is unofficial, it is not printed on an official paper, and without letterhead. It does not have the category or classification for administrative purpose, such as references. It has the copy and paste of the symbol of the name of Canada Revenue Agency, pasted onto the top left corner of the first page only. But it does not have the symbol of the Government of Canada on the bottom right corner as in David's letters. In fact, his letter feels very personal and unprofessional. Second, there is no such thing as auditing GST-HST using only the bank book. All the requested information should be used, especially purchase and sales invoices. Referring to my statement that in auditing GST-HST, you have to use purchase and sales invoices. These are the two sources of information that tells the GST-HST. On page 1 of Bruce's letter, he said, "A bank deposit analysis can be a useful method of verifying the completeness of sales in a small business, rather than simply reviewing the sales invoices." In a political language, Bruce tried to justify the using of a bank book as the sole source of information by saying, "The rationale behind assessing income based on bank deposits is that deposits made into registrant or taxpayer's bank account can only have one of two origins. Either the deposit is from a business source or a non-business source. The auditors totals the deposits made into the registrant's or taxpayer's bank accounts, and from this total he or she removes all non-business deposits, tax refunds and credits, investment income, gifts, etc. The remaining deposits are assumed to be from the business." Is this a statement of a chartered accountant? His credential needs to be investigated. Auditing GST, HST, or other kinds of taxes, it requires technical calculations, not simply reviewing bank book deposits. If just reviewing, that means you do not have the technical capacity. When a person's bank book is a joint and combination account, you have to filter them. To Bruce, the non-business source or the non-sales are the government credits, refunds, and such. Where in the world government credits or refunds are known sales? This is a lie. It is to deceive because the purpose is to fraud. If you audit a person who has a joint account, you have to separate the husband's from the wife, and the husband's personal money from the business money. This is one of the procedures of cash analysis. Bruce argued that using bank book is to analyze the completeness, but there is no such analysis because such analysis requires a separation of husbands and wives, personal and business, receivables and payables. There is no such thing that you claim GST, HST on top of the amount the suppliers charge you. You must deduct them. His letter also reveals that he is actually knowledge illiterate about government finance and accounting. He sends auditors to go into the field and do an audit, but without an auditing plan, without auditing questionnaires, and without an auditing tool. This audit is simply to fraud, not for an audit. Bruce tried rationalizing David's audit work about the calculation of the unreported sales and HST payables. It is like arguing politically, but without the technical merit of auditing, because all is about the numbers transactions in the bank book, including all money from the government. He explained to me how David Hunt comes up with the JST HST per audit, which is bank deposits minus bank deposit divided by 1.13. That is the 13% HST. In short, Bruce was telling me that every number in the bank book is sales. Whether it is from the government or not, whether it is a joint account or not, all are sales. This is what you call a militant scammer. Ignore all the explanation based on knowledge. Just stick to the bank book. Accuse the victim that he understated his sales and take all the money in the bank book. This is a crime. He accuses the small business operators that they understated their sales by hiding his true intention, which is to fraud. Bruce went on explaining the list of what he calls known sales, which are the refunds and credits from the government, such as T1 refunds, Ontario sales tax credits, GST, HST refunds, and rebates, and so forth. Where in the world he learns that all the government refunds and credits are known sales. They are definitely not from a chartered accountant. I mean, a real chartered accountant. Bruce was so excited explaining to me about David's audit report and the detailed list of the known sales, although some are estimated. But he called Ontario sales tax transactional benefit never exists. He also included all the assumptions about the wife's T1 refunds, GST, HST refunds, income from investment, interest, capital gains, dividends. All these do not exist, but he called them known sales. This is a lie. This is not the technicality of auditing GST HST. The technicality of auditing GST HST as per SOR 9145 is similar to the list most business people do. But the government auditors will do it in a more complete calculation. Any difference between the auditor's work and the record the business has is then verified. Why there is a difference, in what source of information that it causes the difference. Most auditors, all auditors, do their verification by collecting several invoices, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Then they ask the victims, explain this invoice. It is similar to asking the politicians, explain this invoice. You spend money at the Bay, why is it included in the claim as a business expense or a travel expense? You spend money on a purse and a pair of shoes, but you claim them as travel expenses. There is a difference between verifying expenses of the politicians and auditing business persons, in this case the GST HST, which is also different from one business to another. It requires technical calculation that involve purchase and sales invoices, not the bank book. It reveals that even Bruce does not know how to do an audit. I confronted him that no one can see GST, HST from a bank book. You have to use the invoices. He said, we don't use invoices, we cannot make money. So the auditing is about making money, not according to the true purpose of auditing, which nobody knows in the first place because they are knowledge illiterate and never trained. The rest of Bruce's letter is basically to justify or confirm David Hunt's deceitful audit, or maybe he is the designer of this deceitful scheme. Though Bruce suggested that I file for an appeal, what to appeal? There has never been any audit done. This is only about looking into the bank book, see how much money there is, and take it all. It is about robbing by pretending doing a GST HST audit. Notice that his letter has the same address David Hunt used, which is no longer valid for all communications and payments as of October 1st, 2012. His letter is dated January 16, 2013 and looks more like a personal letter. Something interesting. From page 2 to page 6, Bruce forgot to copy and paste the name and logo of the Canada Revenue Agency, but he pasted on page 7. The last page. You call this a legit audit? He gave us 15 days to provide the information which David Hunt requested. The chart or the list or the audit will be finalized. In reality, David has already finalized his audit and just waiting to release it. The request for the chart or the list is only to project the image that they are trying to negotiate. It is a manipulation. In both David and Bruce's letters, they propose personal communication directly with them. It is not for official communication, but personal. That is why they have been using post office box addresses, mailing addresses, and the cellular telephones, as well as fax numbers that go directly to them. All Bruce's statements indicate that his chartered accountant is a fake. It is more about arguing politically, but without the weight of his ethical and professional credential. Or it is only a political argument to justify their fraudulent effort without the merit of accounting and public sector auditing technique. On the telephone, David suggested to pay the penalty first, then apply for the appeal 90 days after the payment is made. Failed to collect the offered $6,000 in 30 days. David Hunt sent his letter in which he inserted the statement of audit summary. Still, it is unofficial with copy and paste logo of the Government of Canada at the bottom right corner, which is now smaller and inside the margin, and the name and logo of the Canada Revenue Agency. This is David's letter, dated February 14, 2013, but he still used the same address, 11 East Central Tax Service Office, Kingston, Ontario, 31 Hyperion Court, Post Office Box 2600, and the postal code K7L5P3. This postal code does not belong to the Canada Revenue Agency in Kingston, but to this Post Office Box 2600, an address that is no longer valid for all communications and payments as of October 1st, 2012. David's letter is actually proposing us to pay the penalty by contact him directly and use his cellular telephone. But why do we have to pay while this is a fraud? In his letter, in the previous slide, David inserted the statement of audit adjustments. It is printed on a plain paper with a copy and paste of the name Canada Revenue Agency. Notice that because this is not official, he typed 0011 on the Tax Service Office, which is different from what he typed at the bottom of his letter. The calculation of the audit adjustments is just the difference between the HST paid on purchases or ITC claim reported based on purchase invoices, but he called it original or reassessed, and the 13% HST taken from the bank book deposits, which he called it reassessed amount. He took the difference between the two and called it total adjustments. So, if you add the numbers, the HST paid on purchases or the ITC's claim plus the total adjustment, it gives you the reassessed amount, which is nothing but the 13% of the bank book deposits. This calculation is similar to how he calculated net tax equals ITC or HST paid on purchases plus HST charged or collected, taken from the bank book deposits. It is deceitful. Speaking to Bruce Pettipas did not get us anywhere because all he wants was the money. So we ignored David's gesture to contact him directly as he stated in his letter. 2 days later, we received an unofficial notice of reassessment from this audit with a detailed calculation. To our surprise, the breakdown and the summary reveal that the notice of reassessment is the total amount of money in the bank belongs to three people: the father, the mother, and the son. This is a robbery. Inside David Hunt's letter is also a form of notice of objection, which he said we could file an appeal, but after 90 days. He wanted us to pay first and forget about the appeal, or wait until 90 days. This is not a true audit, but a fraud. In a real audit, the reassessment is about transferring the unverified amount to the T1. You make adjustment to the T1, whatever it is. The result of the audit should be transferred to the T1. That is the so-called reassessment or readjustment. For example, in this case, David argued that he denied all the ITCs, or all the amounts of HST paid on purchases. When people do their income tax, all the HST paid on purchases are not included or have been taken out because they have already been claimed. Therefore, if you deny the ITCs in the reassessment calculation, you must add them back to the expenses, such as in the following formula. Gross income equals sales minus expenses plus ITCs minus CCA, or capital cost allowance. If you make the reassessment to match the total amount a person has in his bank book, that is a fraud. This unofficial notice of reassessment is full of lies. It has 10 pages altogether that explains that for every amount charged associates with certain portion of the Excise Tax Act. They are just the same content, but he wanted to make it look complicated. This is a white-collar fraud, so he made it look like the real thing by hiding inside the Excise Tax Act. This unofficial notice of reassessment is also sent by David Hunt. The paper is unofficial. It is written and printed on a plain paper. On the top left-hand corner below the copy and paste of the name of the Canada Revenue Agency is an address of the Tax Service Office in St. John's, Newfoundland, with a postal code A1B3Z1. He was telling us that this unofficial notice of reassessment is sent by the Tax Service Office in St. John, Newfoundland. But at the bottom of this unofficial notice of reassessment, he gave the Canada Revenue Agency in St. John's Tax Centre, Post Office Box 12076, Station A, St. John's, Newfoundland, A1B 434. This address is also no longer valid as of October 1st, 2012 for all communications and payments. This unofficial notice of reassessment is actually prepared by David Hunt himself and sent from Kingston. Therefore, at the bottom of this unofficial notice of reassessment, he gave his address: Kingston Tax Service Office, 31st Hyperion Court, Post Office Box 2600, Kingston, Ontario, K7L 5P3. Except, rather than giving his telephone number, his cellular telephone number, he gave the customer service telephone number, which is 1-800-959-5525. We had problem with the Canada Revenue Agency before when they sent us a letter saying that we should send our payment to St. John's Tax Centre, Post Office Box 12076, Station A, St. John's, Newfoundland. Each time we send payments to this address, the government never received it. Every month we received a pink letter from the Canada Revenue Agency asking for payment plus interest. But we have made our payment. It took 9 months for us to communicate with the Canada Revenue Agency, in which we provided the proof of payment to clear this matter. After 9 months, Canada Revenue Agency stopped sending us the pink letter. The money we sent, either by check or electronically, always ends up in someone's bank account. At the top right-hand corner, below the audit period date, there is a number, 0002932. This is the number of the agent who processed this unofficial notice of reassessment, per instruction by Bruce. Do you really know who this agent is? Is she David? David used the Kingston Tax Service Office, 31 Hyperion Court, Post Office Box 2600, Kingston, Ontario, K7L5P3. With 3 different addresses in one letter, there's no doubt it is a fraud. And of course, David gave his cellular telephone number, expecting us to contact him directly, but he also gave a telephone number of the Canada Revenue Agency customer service, one that deals with T1, not GST. It is interesting, though, at the bottom of the letter in the middle there is printed the name of the Canada Revenue Agency's commissioner, Andrew Trush, which is the same as the notice of reassessment of T1. This is a copy and paste process to equalize the notice of reassessment of GST-HST to notice of assessment of T1, because the charge is that my husband has not filed income tax for 2 years. This is a lie. Well, a real federal government agency does not have 3 different addresses in one letter or one page of the letter, but a scammer's does. And the total amount of the result of this reassessment is the total amount of the money in the bank book belongs to 3 people, the father, the mother, and the son, at the time David came to do the audit. He used 2 bank books. One belongs to our son. Now, this is real robbery, a real fraud. Now I'm showing you the official notice of return adjustments or summary for the GST-HST when you file GST-HST report. This is different from the audit summary or the unofficial notice of assessment David Hunt did. The name of the Canada Revenue Agency Commissioner has never been printed in all official notice of assessment for the GST-HST or the notice of return adjustments or summary. For the official notice of return adjustments or summary, it is always printed on an official paper. It has official number. It has the classification or category that explains what type it is, but there has never been the name of the commissioner. The official notice of assessment for the GST-HST has the same format, but it has an explanation of debit and credit. I mean, it tells you the amount of HST you collected minus the HST paid on purchases or the input tax credits and the balance, which is the net tax. From this balance, it carries on explaining that the balance either a refund or the amount owed. And it is also printed on this type of official paper with official category. In paper, the Commissioner of the Canada Revenue Agency makes a big flowery promise about his service to the citizens, but in practice, he does practically nothing. He never reads anything that comes in and goes out. People at the front line do everything, including answering your letter if you make a complaint. They answer in a political manner because they are all illiterate, and they do everything. The problem with people doing multiple tasks or do everything is that they do not really know much. That is why all their reply is political. And they also come from the political party. They come in with the minister or the commissioner. They screen the communication and they ignore your complaints. They consider your complaint is a nuisance, so they just speak politically incorrect to cover their ignorance. Notice that in all their arguments, it is all about what they feel, but never explain about the technicality of an audit. Auditing is a matter of technicality, not a matter of political argument. To the other victims, after receiving the unofficial notice of reassessment, they paid the penalty, went through the appeal process, paid for the charge or the amount agreed during the negotiation while trying hard to explain to the appeal officers how they do their books. These appeal officers make the victims feel guilty and stupid because their explanation never goes anywhere. They are accused that they do not know how to do their book, just as David did. They behave militantly to defend in a political manner the audit report of the auditors because they do not know the technicality of the audit themselves. So the victims seem to talk to the barn wall. In reality, there's nothing wrong with how people do their books. They are the owners of the books, and they do it in a way that they understand their financial status. They do their books according to their preferences. The government does not dictate a business person how he should do his book, as David did in his letter. Remember, David said in his letter after the audit dated December 3rd, 2012, he said, use this chart to help you with your bookkeeping record. If you follow David's suggestion, you fail. He is misleading you. David does not know accounting or bookkeeping, so he is misleading you, leading you away from the accounting process. The true accounting process, one that is in accordance with the general accepted accounting principle. If you follow these principles, he is trying to unscramble you and your bookkeeping record. Later on, he will return and make more money out of you because he knows you are screwed. The government does not dictate you how you do your book. What concerns the government is whether you pay your obligation or not, and honestly, or that you are an honest citizen, a responsible person, and accountable to pay taxes. Paying taxes is the same as public donation. Citizens help citizens. For example, the government does not ask people to donate and walk or run for the cure because they have collected it through taxes. The money is channeled through the healthcare system and distributed to every person who needs medical care. The problem is that auditors are knowledge illiterate. They do not have financial or accounting knowledge background either in the private sector or in the public sector, and not to mention auditing as public sector auditors. Even in the case of HST paid on purchases or the ITC or how to calculate business income, they do not understand how to calculate business income. David Hunt does not know about input tax credits and where it comes from. He does not believe that ITCs are accumulated, not calculated, because he does not have the knowledge and untrained. He does not know how to calculate business income, that the amount you have to pay to suppliers, which he claims as sales, is not your income. It is an expense and you must deduct it to come to your income. He cannot read your payables and receivables reports. He does not understand what they are. He does not understand or does not know that a sales invoice of a contractor includes the cost of materials from the suppliers and they are not income to the contractor. It also includes the cost of labor the contractor uses and must be paid to the person who provides the labor to the contractor. They are not income to the contractor. Although you try to explain to him, he does not believe. The reason of his disbelief is that he is knowledge illiterate. He ignores your explanation because he is very proud and is covering his illiteracy. He is very proud of himself because he is a federal government auditor. A federal government auditor, but without education, knowledge, and special training in auditing as a public sector auditor. He is militantly defending his decision. That is a pride. His audit report is full of accusations, such as the victim and his wife received over $7,000 refund from the federal government. But a refund for what? He accused that the wife has capital gains, income from investments, interest, T1 refunds, HST refunds, or the husband received a refund from business number, investment income. All these do not exist. By the way, our politicians also always start their day or speech with accusation, blaming, and scapegoating. They want to fight with the other politicians. People think that this is normal, but scientifically, this type of behavior or attitude of accusing, blaming, and scapegoating indicates that the person is emotionally immature, unjust, cruel, and morally displeasing and damaging. This is very true. The Canada Revenue Agency's auditors are cruel and unjust. It is difficult to explain knowledge to a group of people who do not have the knowledge. While the audit is only a process used by these mafia group members to fraud the victims, they are never trained to do an audit. They are sent to do an audit but without auditing plan, without auditing questionnaires, and without any auditing tool. All victims tend to pay because it seems impossible to explain knowledge to these militant individuals who do not have the knowledge. People are militant because they only know very little. They are using their position and power to coerce because money is their intrinsic motivation. An audit is not about how people do their book, as David Hunt said in his proposed audit letter. David Hunt only used the opportunity to rob the citizens so that he will be promoted to public servant or just simply to make money. David fictitiously made up all the numbers as an accusation so that the victim feel guilty and pay. Therefore, in the unofficial notice of reassessment, David Hunt put the total amount of money belongs to 3 people because it is from 3 people's bank books. He never used invoices, only bank book, and his numbers for the assessment is also the money, the amount of money in the bank at the time he made the audit. This audit is not about an audit, but about robbing. It is about a fraud, which Bruce Petipa said over the telephone, making money. They want to make money, robbing the innocent citizens by using this audit process. Nothing is official, but individually, personally. Many have fallen victims of this strategy. Thousands of small business operators have become victims of this audit scheme. They cannot read or analyze all this white-collar work or the audit report. Most small business operators have a joint account. So after getting audit, they started open a business account. After receiving this unofficial notice of reassessment, I contacted Bruce and complained. I told him that I want a re-audit. I also spoke to David and asked for a re-audit. There is no such thing that HST paid on purchases plus HST charge equals 13% of the bank book deposits. Both Bruce and David rejected my request for re-audit. David said, "You can file an appeal." Bruce told me to pay first and then file an appeal later. He said, "You have 90 days to file the appeal. If the minister finds that she is wrong, you will receive your money back. He kept telling me to find an accountant who knows how to go through the appeal process. However, I'm also an accountant, and I know the government accounting and its auditing. I never buy this argument. When the lie is so perfect, they forget how they created it in the first place. Other victims, soon after receiving this unofficial notice of reassessment out of fear, do not know how the audit report should be or looks like, and because they don't like to be harassed, they pay. They use accountants to negotiate payment through the appeal process. Then they are suggested to file an appeal at the tax court. Because of this, Bruce and his gang find it an easy way of making money. They also know that most small business people are not good in keeping their records. On the telephone conversations with Bruce, he told me that David is their best auditor because he brings a lot of money. Bluntly, I said to Bruce, "You never read David's audit report? This is not an audit. This is robbing. So he makes money by robbing people and you agree?" Bruce laughed. A day after we received the unofficial notice of reassessment, we received a telephone call from someone claiming he is from the Canada Revenue Agency and wanted to talk to my husband's former accountant. He left a message in our answering machine and asked if we call him back at 1-800-959-5525 because we owe the government money. This is not true. The government will not call a victim and ask for the money. I called this number back and asked why Canada Revenue Agency is asking money through the telephone. I was transferred to 4 different people. The 4th person claimed that my husband has not filed income tax for 2 years. He wanted the money right away in the amount of $88,000. How in the world David Hunt came to our house with a proposal to do GST HST audit, but it turns out to be not filing income tax for 2 years. That does not make sense, does it? This also has been the strategy of their audit of the small business operators. From the HST, it becomes not filing income tax. This is deceitful. I called Bruce and told him about this. He said, "No, it is about HST." Then he said, "Go find an accountant because he knows how to go through our appeal process." I also kept telling him, "I don't want to go through an appeal process. I want a re-audit. There has never been any audit work done." Then he kind of mumbled, "Just pay." The lie is so perfect and seems so real or legit. They forget how they created it in the first place. Therefore, they cannot do a re-audit. I am supposed to write to the higher level official to report this illegal practice, but they are forcing us to communicate with them personally, which is out of the official process and record, and all I met are the front line people. Like a manufacturing corporation, Canada Revenue Agency hides their leaders. They make sure the leaders, you cannot communicate with the leaders. They make sure the leaders do not know what they're doing. They control the communication so the leaders do not know all the criminal activities they have been doing. I have filled the form of notice of objection sent by David Hunt and ready to send, but Bruce told me not to use that form. Use the one he was going to send instead. Notice in this form I requested an audit and notified that there has never been any audit done. I also stated the fact that numbers are fictitious. This is more about seeing how much money we have in the bank and take it all. This is robbery. Bruce actually wanted me to send the notice of objection to Western Intake Center, Barnaby Fraser Tax Service Office, 9737 King George Boulevard, Post Office Box 9070, Station Main, Surrey, BC, P3T5W6. He wanted me to send the form to another post office box address in Surrey, BC, but this address is no longer valid for all communications and payments as of October 1st, 2012. So once I receive it, I send it away to the Appeal Division in Sudbury instead. Then we received another unofficial notice of reassessment. It notifies us that the refunds for the HST period October 1st, 2012 to December 31st, 2012 in the amount of $1,138.55 has been deducted from the total amount owed from this audit. So there is an outstanding balance of $32,188.66. This refund has actually gone to someone's account, the person who has been taking all the payments we made to the government. However, this unofficial notice of reassessment is just like the other letters and the unofficial papers. It has copy and paste the name of the Canada Revenue Agency and the logo, printed on a regular paper. This letter is actually sent by David Hunt. He wanted us to contact him in Kingston directly and personally. But he made the letter as if it comes from the St. John's Tax Center, where we used to send our GST HST quarterly. At the top left-hand corner of this notice of assessment, this unofficial notice of assessment, there he printed St. John's, Newfoundland, A1B 3Z1. At the bottom of his letter, he put business inquiries, 1-800-959-5525, 290 Empire Avenue, St. John's, Newfoundland, A1B3Z1. Notice there is still the name of the commissioner copied and pasted at the bottom of the letter. This is because it associates with the T1 notice of assessment. The address in this notice of assessment is different from the previous ones sent after the audit. After the audit, the addresses are 31 Hyperion Court in Kingston and 2 other different addresses in St. John's, Newfoundland. This notice of reassessment has a different number below the audit period date. It is no longer agent 0002932, but agent 0002683. I do not know who these agents are. These agents can be anybody. They can also be customer service agents. They are all over the country. Or maybe they are from Brazil or India. When the government operates with the customer service agents, it is dangerous. With the agent is known by only the number. Anyone from anywhere around the world can impersonate himself as a federal government employee. These customer service agents also, some are, working as the customer service agents at the bank. So they have access to the victim's bank account. In the case of some victims, this agent who work at the Canada Revenue Agency and at the bank at the same time, they freeze the victim's bank account. As a result, the victims were shocked when all of a sudden they cannot withdraw money from the bank. On the second page, David gave the address St. John's Tax Center, Post Office Box 12076, Station A, St. John's, Newfoundland, A1B 44. However, he wanted us to communicate with him directly to his address in 31 Hyperion Court, Post Office Box 2600, Kingston, Ontario, and his cellular telephone number if you wanted to contact him directly. How in the world an official letter has so many different addresses in one page? An official letter will not have 3 different addresses. David wanted us to contact him directly or anybody in the customer service. Does it make sense to you? David must have done this to so many different people, hundreds, thousands, who knows, that he becomes confused himself. The address of St. John's Tax Center with P.O. Box 12076 Station A, as I mentioned, is no longer valid for all communications and payments since October 1st, 2012. This notice of assessment is dated February 20, 2013. Since this tax center was established with the post office box address, they sent us a letter and informed us to send our GST HST report and payment to this address. But our money never reaches the receiver general. So when you send money to this post office box address, the government never receives it. It goes to their bank account. After receiving this, I still curious. So I called Bruce and talked to him about the appeal process. He asked if I did apply for the appeal. I said I did. I asked for a re-audit, but there has never been any audit. Most of the numbers are fictitious. How in the world you use the wife as well as if the wife is also an HST registered? All the numbers about the wives are fictitious. Then he said, "Oh, we do not use the numbers for the wife, only the bank book." I said to him, "You do not use the calculation for the wife, but only the bank book. But the wife also owns the bank book. It is a joint account. Then why you put a detailed calculation of the wives in your audit report? Isn't that to deceive?" Well, I asked for a re-audit anyway. Bruce was surprised. He asked, "Why did you apply for an appeal? You have 90 days. Just pay first. Where did you send it?" I told him I sent it to the Sudbury office. Quickly he said, "I'll fix it." That was the end of my communication with Bruce because he may be the person who engineers this fraudulent audit scheme. Since these audit papers we receive from the Canada Revenue Agency are no longer formal because they want to manipulate us and continuously implant in our mind that their work is legit. While waiting for an answer from the Sudbury office, I sent a letter to Ministry of National Revenue, the Canada Taxpayers Ombudsman, and the Office of the Auditor General complaining about this audit and seeking help to solve this issue. As I put all the folders together, to my surprise, some invoices were missing. I remember that when David left our premises, he said he took with him some documents, but never showed them, never asked, and there must be a purpose why he took the purchase invoices. A federal government auditor stole the victim's invoices while doing an audit. This is very unethical. When Bruce said that he is going to fix it, yes, he did fix it. We received a letter from the Sudbury office, the Appeals Division. The letter is dated April 13, 2013 and also unofficial, not written on an official letterhead but has a copy and paste of the Canada Revenue Agency name and logo. This time the logo of the Government of Canada is positioned or pasted at the bottom left corner, not on the bottom right corner as in all David's letter, and the size of the letters is a little smaller than that in David's letter. It does not have the category and classification for administrative purpose. It has two telephone numbers, 705-671-0238 and 1-866-242-3161. These two telephones have the same voicemail of one person, a woman. They are actually mobile phones. When I called 705-671-0238, all I got was a voicemail of a woman claiming it is the Canada Revenue Agency, the Appeals Division. When I called the 866-242-3161, it seems not active. Then in 2015, all of a sudden this number active, but all you usually get is a voicemail of a woman saying, "Hello, blah blah blah, the Appeals Division of Canada Revenue Agency." The letter from the Appeal Division Office sadly requires that we make a full payment while waiting between 6 and 9 months for the appeal process to go through. It is forceful, isn't it? They approach every channel to force us to pay. We waited for this supposed to be an appeal process, which would take about 6 or 9 months. This letter does not make sense. It is unofficial but signed by Lori Miller, the Chief of Appeals. But it is an electronic signature, which means it is not Lori Miller, but John Doe or Jane Doe who signed it. There is also a fax number, so if you dial the telephone numbers or the fax number, they all go to the same person, the woman. An electronic signature is the same as forgery, and forgery is a crime. So even at the appeal division, they do this white-collar crime too. This gang has its members in the appeals division office.